On the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use. Welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. This is episode 27, created on November 3rd, 2022. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me are Jeff in Minnesota and Neil on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Hello, gentlemen. Tonight I'm having a Grand Marnier.
Hello, everyone. My liver got quite the workout in Buffalo, and so I am drinking water. Oh, wait, no, I'm not going to do that. That's kind of silly. So we went had some wine tasting when we were out there in the Niagara Peninsula, and so I am drinking a Pinot Noir from the Niagara Peninsula in Canada, right on Lake Ontario.
And how is it, Neil?
It is delicious.
All right, and I'm drinking a Harvey Wallbanger because none of us got enough vitamin C this week yet. Jeff, is that Grand Marnier? Is that neat?
Yeah, it is. It is neat indeed.
All right, you can find us on YouTube and Twitter at Green Bay Chat and Facebook at the GBC Podcast, Green Bay Chat. And now just the audio is available on Spotify and Anchor by searching for Green Bay Chat. Hey, we spent the weekend in Buffalo. We want to tell you all about our experience there and the wonderful people of Buffalo. But first, let's talk about that game from our unique perspective inside Highmark Stadium. Great seats, say Jeff?
Indeed, as you can see from the picture here, we were 15 rows up from the field in the end zone, and very unique perspective indeed. Wonderful fans, great crowd, and we had really good seats.
Seats being the operative.
Well, yeah, I was going to say we had good standing area.
Yeah, in that west end zone where we were, the opposite side of the tunnel, that's the only section of that building that has metal bleachers. But their metal bleachers are unique in the sense that they actually give you a back. There is a long plastic backrest, at least something to lean up against. And as you said, yeah, we spent most of the time standing anyway.
Yep, and that back provides a nice kind of percussion for the Bills fans to hammer on that thing when a big play is coming up. So that those got lots of workout during the game,
but not from our backs.
Yeah, exactly. From their fists and their hands pounding on those.
But the game itself, Jeff, we felt good, especially about the running game. Both running backs looked well, Aaron Jones in particular.
Yeah,
maybe
huge games.
Some questionable passes here and there. Defense did well, but we came away 27-17 loss, but we covered the spread, right?
Woohoo! Yes,
right.
Yes, we did. That 10.5.
That is not one of the statistics that matters, unfortunately.
No, it is not.
Not indeed. Well, unless you either won or lost a bunch of money because of that.
But the game itself, Neil, you said you went and you re-watched the television broadcast. So our perspective in the end zone, we saw the game from behind, watching plays develop either towards us or away from us. It is a different perspective than what you get on the game broadcast, or even a lot of the pictures in the all 22. How did you see the game differently once you watched it on TV?
Well, let's start out with some of the things that we did see in the stadium. And I want to give a big shout out to the Bills fans because this is of all the games that I've been to away from Lambeau Field, this is the one where Packers fans couldn't get a go Pack go in any way that they tried. The Bills fans were loud constantly. They were loud when they needed to be. Anytime Packers fans tried to make some noise, it basically just went away. And the situation usually when you've got the ability to go Pack go is when the Packers start to take a lead and go ahead. And obviously that didn't happen at all during the game, but the Bills fans were extremely loud. I had ringing in my ears after the game and the next day, but it was glorious to see that level of fandom and to see the passion within that fan base. This is a fan base that absolutely loves their team, and I enjoyed that element of being within the stadium. As far as the game itself was concerned, well, I guess we could have done worse is in the end, my biggest conclusion as far as the game is concerned, right? It looked for a while like we were going to get blown out. We were down 14-0 early in the second quarter. We were down 24-7 at halftime, and it didn't really look like we could do a whole lot as far as the game was concerned. And thankfully that second half was very different. And I think that one of the things that sort of struck us as the game was over, as we're just sort of standing around the stadium, is the fact that the overall statistics in the game looked like we could have won the game, or looked like it was a very similar battle between those two teams. Basically the same number of first downs. We had a better conversion rate on third down. Yards, we gained them by yards, 398 to 369. Overall, we had a greater time of possession, 33-48 to 26-12. They had 2 turnovers to our 1. So yards, time of possession, turnovers, it looked like we had a somewhat of an advantage as far as the game is concerned. And if you looked at those statistics in the absence of anything else, you would assume that the Packers were likely to have won the game. Whereas the reality was, it really never felt like we were that in the game, right? We were able to bring it and make it close at the end, but it just felt like that it was going more towards a blowout than towards a game that we were going to come back on. And we certainly had hope in the second half, but it was not a good overall game as far as us really bringing the Packers fans into the game and giving us a chance of at least quieting the Bills fans down slightly.
Well, the other thing that I noticed too is that pregame and kind of walking into the stadium, seemed like there were a lot of, you saw a lot of, Packer jerseys, which was great. But once in the stadium, we were too spread out, or there were enough, the Bills fans, obviously it's their stadium, right? But in terms of, there weren't like pockets of Packer fans or things like that in this sea of blue. That's the other thing regarding the Bills fans. I mean, normally you see some jerseys and some colors and things like that. I mean, almost every person in the building was wearing a Bills jersey or blue or something. It was really, really impressive to see like you said before, the fandom coming out, not allowing any visiting, fans to take over or to even get a cheer in, frankly. I mean, they brought it the whole game.
Well, the trick there, Jeff, is that the seats were blue. Even that seat back that we talked about on our section was blue, but the rest of the stadium, those are blue plastic seats. So when there isn't a person in the seat, it's still blue. So, it looked like a sea of blue, but I think that's part of why. The interesting part is that second level, though, the 200 level, they look like they were under heat lamps. Yeah, they had red lights in that second level. I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, those apparently the club seats and this mid 50-degree evening was perhaps too chilly. I'm not sure, but yeah, those heat lamps were on pretty much the whole game, and and that seemed odd at first, but I guess they wanted to be warm. But overall, the stadium, it's a little bit dated, so it kind of, there were parts of it that reminded me of the Lambeau before the renovation, the super narrow corridors, the really, really lack of male bathroom facilities.
It was a 20-minute wait to go to the bathroom at halftime. I will note the halftime's only 15 minutes.
Yeah, not ideal. And so for any female patrons that went to the game, who knows how long they had to wait, because generally those lines are longer. So, there were some things that are dated, but some things that worked really well. The stadium is close. We're obviously close to the field here. So that was enjoyable. Quite a few fireworks going off, the introductions and things like that. That was really impressive. The one thing that I thought, as opposed to like last year being in Cincinnati or just in most stadiums, is normally the audio for either the music or even frankly the referees is really loud. That was not the case here. Well, you couldn't hear the refs. Now, granted, there was some crowd noise that had to deal with that, but it seemed like the sound system was, I'm picking on the sound system here. Oh my God. But you couldn't really hear that much.
But you're right. Yeah, I don't think I heard a single word the referee said during the game. I mean, I knew that he was making noise, but I could not hear what the noise was. So my hope for the people of Buffalo, when they get this new stadium, or technically the people of Orchard Park, because that's where the new stadium is going to go, is that they get a decent scoreboard and some better Jumbotron TVs up there.
Yeah.
And get them better positioned. The east end zone has, where you would look up to want to watch the plays, has an ad banner, a giant advertising banner. That advertising banner does nothing for anybody. And then they have above that, and separated was 2 smaller Jumbotron televisions that,
Yeah, 2 video screens.
so
Yeah.
in addition to getting, in addition to getting a bigger and better positioned Jumbotron, I hope they also get a better Jumbotron operator, because we were very frustrated with what we would get to see afterwards as far as replays and things like that. And the relevance of what they were putting up on those televisions was not there. But other than that, the entire experience was certainly above what I expected, above average on anything. It was a good day all the way around. I think the weather helped with that. Having good weather makes you really enjoy the game, regardless of the outcome.
So speaking about the outcome of the game, though, so as I was thinking about the game beforehand, as I was talking to people before the game, my whole approach to this game was, well, the Packers are playing with house money. We expect the Packers that are going to lose this game, and so we hope that we don't get blown out. But in the end, we just want to have a good time, and that's a perfectly lovely Zen attitude to have. But when you start getting punched in the jaw right away in the first quarter, that Zen was not there during the actual game. I know that John and I were both sort of cranky the entire first half as we're just sort of watching our team not do what it needs to be doing as far as being competitive in the game. And, that says a lot about Buffalo. I think I'll take the positive view here that Buffalo is obviously an extremely good team, but there were a lot of question marks as far as the Packers are concerned.
Well, I'll follow that up too, because there was, again, like you said, statistically, it seemed like it should have been way closer. So I went back. I didn't rewatch the game, but I went back and I looked at the different drives, the kind of the play-by-plays and things like that. And what struck me is the Packers were able to, the offense was able to put together long drives. They just never scored the damn ball. So 9-play drive, 34 yards, got down to the Bills 38, turned it over on downs. 11 plays, 48 yards, got down to the Bills 26, turned it over on downs. Towards the end of the game, 9 plays, 48 yards, got down to the Bills 37, missed field goal. And then, of course, there was the 8-play, 72-yard drive that scored the touchdown, but that was overturned and ultimately a field goal. So out of those 4 drives inside the Bills' 40-yard line, they got exactly 3 points. That's not, again, we've talked about this whole year. The margin of error isn't there, right? If they are not perfect in all aspects of the game, asshats, offense, defense, they're not going to probably win the game. And certainly over these last couple of weeks, that's been the case. But here again, they're getting good drives. They were 6 of 12 on third downs. They were 0 of 2 on fourth downs. Hope springs eternal. They were close. They were really close. They put the drives together and didn't score any damn points.
But the problem was, the thing that was close was how far Aaron Rodgers was throwing the ball downfield. It was a lot of passes that were extremely short, and those short passes are in the end the difference as far as the game is concerned. Our ability to actually have shorter third down conversions, our ability to make conversions on third and fourth down. So if you look at the statistics for Aaron Rodgers versus Josh Allen in the first half, both quarterbacks were 8 of 11 in the first half. Aaron Rodgers had 62 yards passing, 2 sacks for 13, 49 yards net passing in the first half, 3.8 yards per attempt. Josh Allen, 127 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 9.8 yards per attempt, 9.8 versus 3.8. That is why we were down 24-7 at halftime. In the end, is because they did more with their quarterback play. Obviously, Aaron Jones was incredible throughout, and I'll talk a little bit more about him and the line play that's associated with that later. But Aaron Rodgers didn't do anything until the fourth quarter. Leading into the fourth quarter, at the end of the third quarter, Aaron Rodgers had 69 net yards passing. 69 net yards passing. Fourth quarter, 7 of 14, 121 yards. But essentially, the passing game didn't come into play until we got into the fourth quarter. So we did have 208 yards rushing. That was obviously the key element. And Aaron Jones, I don't think we can talk highly enough about the role that he played. There were 13 missed tackles on Aaron Jones during that game. There were 106 yards for Aaron Jones after his first contact. When I rewatched the game, obviously I saw a lot of things as far as blocking, but what I really noticed as far as the running plays were Aaron Jones could have had, 60 yards rushing if it had not been for a superhuman effort on his part. He was hit constantly pretty early on, and he managed to sneak his way through spaces. We did have some really good blocking on some plays, but there was a lot of Aaron Jones making things up from very little that was there. And it was an impressive effort. And it really screams at why the hell weren't we doing this the first 7 games of the season? Because wow, what a talent he is. And of course we knew that, and we seemingly forgot about it for the first 7 games of the year.
Well, especially since this is a good defense, right? I mean, this is not the Olay, 20th ranked defense. This is a really good defense. And the fact that as part of an individual effort, what he was able to put together, I mean, 31 rushing attempts, 6.7 yards per rush. I mean, that under normal circumstances, that's a win, right? I mean, that's like, wow, no brainer. But the encouraging piece is they stuck to the run for the most, they just kept handing him the ball, and he just kept coming through with the effort. So is that a springboard to, when they play lesser defenses, that there'll be more success? Hopefully.
So looking at the game and on those running plays, the things that impressed me most as far as the running plays, other than Aaron Jones, David Bakhtiari was back to looking like David Bakhtiari during that game. He was just crushing people on the running plays. John Runyon had a number of enormous blocks that sprung Aaron Jones open. I had a very, very impressive. He had a couple of maybe less than perfect plays, but John Runyon also had a spectacular game. On the line, though, there were 2 players that certainly underperformed as far as the game was concerned, and that's Zach Tom and Josh Nijman. I mean, both of those guys made a number of critical errors. When we got stopped, when we had a running play that didn't go that far, it was probably one of those 2. And when we had a sack, it was probably one of those 2 that was involved. It was a very bad game for both of those as far as the blockers were concerned. And just a note, as far as the game is concerned, we had 2 sacks on Aaron Rodgers, but we also had 2 sacks that were overturned because of penalties on Buffalo, one of which was on a free play. We had a free play and Aaron Rodgers was sacked on the free play. We took the 5 yards, so the sack doesn't show up in the statistics, but in any normal circumstance, Aaron Rodgers is trying to do something serious with that rather than get sacked. Going back to those 4th down plays, though, those 4th down plays also had that same component. One of those 4th down plays was on a sack, and it was specifically a situation where Josh did not take care of his man, and all of a sudden the incoming defender went right at Aaron Rodgers. There was one where it was both Tom and Nijman that allowed the pocket to collapse on Rodgers and prevented Rodgers from being able to get the play off. And the other 4th down was essentially the same thing, that we did not do the job as our line needed to do on those key plays. So when I look at what failed on those 4th down conversions, and as you noted, those were really critical plays as far as the game was concerned. The line play was a real problem on that. And I think that Aaron Jones covered up some of the weaknesses of the line just because of his magic and running. Going to the other side of the ball, there's been a lot of discussion about the number of missed tackles that the Packers had as far as the game is concerned. So Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage both had 3 missed tackles. We had obviously Quay Walker's ejection, but even before his ejection, he did not look good. Devondre Campbell did not look good. Rasul Douglas had a game that was very up and down. Jair Alexander had a superb game, but he was never on Stephon Diggs. And so we're back into the situation that we talked about earlier in the year that with Jefferson is, why are we not putting Jair on their best receiver? I mean, Rasul Douglas was really toasted by Stephon Diggs. There was another play where they had Darnell Savage on Stephon Diggs on a long passing play. And, they exploited the matchups that were available to them, and good for them. But I do question elements of scheme, but I also worry about this element of reversion with a number of our defensive players that did really, really well last year and definitely were below that level as far as this game is concerned. Rashawn Gary had a couple of missed tackles as well, where essentially if he had been able to contain Josh Allen a little bit better, now easier said than done to contain Josh Allen, to be fair. But there were a number of plays also. Singletary was a guy who destroyed us as far as a number of running plays. And essentially our D-backs ended up making tackles because the front did not do its job. And I specifically, in looking at what the defense was doing, I'm really concerned about the the run defense of our interior linemen. Our interior linemen were basically controlled by their offensive linemen. And in that situation, the linebackers have to take control and make plays and make stops behind, if not behind the line of scrimmage, at least within the first couple of yards. And the long plays that the Bills made were fundamentally because our interior linemen were completely neutralized, and then our linebackers weren't up to the job.
When we talk about the game as a whole, though, that eye test, if you will, this is a game that I think the three of us did expect a loss of. This is one of those, we were hoping this would be the Super Bowl preview, that Green Bay might lose this in Buffalo, but could win in Arizona later this year. As things changed with the season, the 3 weeks going into this game, the 3-game losing streak going into it, this team just looked downright abysmal. And we lowered expectations severely coming into this game, where I think if we had been rolling into town with a 5-2 record or even a 6-1 record and going up against Buffalo in that Super Bowl preview and be like, oh man, this is gonna be great. Let's just not shit the bed on this one and let's play really well. Where we change that to, okay, we've been looking abysmal. Let's try to at least make a good showing of this. And that concept of covering the spread and having a good showing, because I don't think that the Buffalo fans ever felt that the deal was sealed. I think that they felt that Green Bay was in the whole way, and even reading some Twitter afterwards, even going to our friends from last week, the Not the Buffalo podcast, not another Buffalo podcast. I don't think that those guys even felt like it was in the bag until the very end, until that missed field goal. Green Bay had that chance to put the field goal, and then it would have been onside kick, get the ball, score a touchdown, kind of thing. And when you're playing within 2 scores like that, and Aaron Rodgers, you still feel kind of good about it. So I think overall, that eye test, the Rasul Douglas interception. Just players in place, the guys that came in, McDuffie and Wilson, who came in for Walker and Campbell, they held their own on the defense. So it's not a loss. I mean, it's a loss, but it's not a total loss of the season. Those of us who picked the team to go 12-5, we're looking at this saying now, all right, 9-game winning streak on the way. Let's go.
Yeah. There seems to be a few positives that I took away from the game. And I don't know if it was because I was drinking the Bills Mafia Kool-Aid or what exactly, what it was. But so my positives, and I don't think I don't want to look at it as a moral victory. I kind of feel like that's what it is. But be that as it may, whether it's a moral victory or Bills Kool-Aid, Bills Mafia Kool-Aid, whatever. So the defense in the second half held the Bills to 3 points. Okay. They held him to 125 yards, 3 points, and they had 2 takeaways. They picked off Josh Allen twice in the fourth quarter. Now that's never happened before in Josh Allen's career. So, okay, that's to me is a big positive. The offense, 95-yard drive. On one occasion, they started right back where we were sitting on the 5-yard line, and they marched all the way down the field and scored a touchdown. 6.7 yards per rush, as I mentioned before. That's a huge positive. Now we're going into Detroit, a 1-6 team. They give up a lot of points. The Packers have scored a lot of points historically, especially recently against Detroit. I'm optimistic, I guess.
Hopefully the cure for what ails you is a trip to Detroit. That's what it has been in the past. And that's what we've got to hope for here. And we'll certainly talk about that game in a little bit. But yeah, I think that overall the team as a whole looked better than how they fell apart in the 3 weeks prior to that. It's still a loss. The proverbial moral victory, maybe not, but it is something for them to say, let's move forward.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I would say that to me is a positive as far as the game is concerned was the blocking of our tight ends. I mean, DeGuara and Mercedes Lewis just both were beasts as far as their blocking was concerned. And there's no doubt that the blocking of DeGuara was central to Aaron Jones getting as many yards as he did, to AJ Dillon getting as many yards as he did. He absolutely looked fabulous out there. And I think that's the first time that DeGuara has really stood out to me as somebody who looked like he merited the draft pick that he was picked at, the 3rd round draft pick. He really looked good. And I think that if we can find that role for him where he is contributing very positively and significantly to the team, this is one of those, we talked at the beginning of the year about what the team needs to do. There were players that needed to make leaps. DeGuara was one of those players that I was hoping was going to take a leap. And this game was the game where I saw it more than anything I've seen so far this year from him. Now, I will say, as far as the game is concerned, our defense was good in the second half, but on rewatching the game, Josh Allen also had a bunch of terrible throws. I don't know what was going on, but there were a number of cases where he just was like, he looked like Aaron Rodgers has much of this year. And there were receivers that were open and he hit the receivers low. He was off as far as his positioning is concerned. And there were certainly plays on defense that were really good against Josh Allen in the second half, but there was also Josh Allen not playing at his level. It's almost like they sort of took the foot off the gas in the second half and they were a little bit tuned out as far as the offense was concerned. And that was really striking to me from a Josh Allen perspective.
So that begs a question, for one of the first times this year, did the Packers defense actually kind of scheme a little bit differently in the second half? Were changes made to kind of rattle this guy a little bit, do you think? Or did he just suck on his own?
He just looked off. I mean, it looked like they were doing about the same thing that they were doing in the first half. It's just that he wasn't making the passes in the second half that he was making so fluidly as far as the first half is concerned. I didn't see anything as far as the defense that looked like it had changed that much. Obviously, again, we had made some plays, and the plays are a huge deal. And that is something that we absolutely want to look positively on. But by the same time, the passes defended, this is something that is really good to see after, again, how bad we had been at the beginning of the season on that. But I think also there was a matter of just mindset, and we're going to play, I'm not going to say conservatively because they still were throwing the ball downfield, but there was definitely something different about the way Allen played in the second half. And I'm not ready to ascribe that all to the Packers defense getting fully right.
So the day as a whole, Sunday that is, was really pretty good. We had a kickoff of 8:20 p.m. because we were in that crazy Eastern time zone. And it really gave us all day Sunday to take our time to get there. In fact, Neil, you and I got up and we went and watched an Arsenal match at 10 a.m. Spent 2 hours at a local bar in Buffalo watching soccer and eating a nice breakfast there. We get back, Jeff, you and Dave, you went out for breakfast. We get back to the house. We gear up and we decide, hey, the game starts at 8:20. Those team lots open at 4:20. We know that there's stuff going on in and around the neighborhood. We don't know how early it's going to start. Let's leave at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock should be good. So we leave at 2 o'clock and we map our way out. We actually worked our way around where we came into Orchard Park from the south. And as we are approaching, we're realizing that we are probably 4 hours late, even though we got there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we had to get in line for the special parking lot that we needed to use. But we found a spot for the vehicle. We were able to start getting some pictures. We were able to experience the tailgating. There's the three of us kind of in that empty lot before the regular lots.
The empty official lot.
The empty official lot. Now, the private lots, the things about this around Highmark Stadium around there in Orchard Park is it's in a neighborhood just like Lambeau Field. So you have houses that park cars. You have houses that are throwing game day parties. And you have what is unique is private parking lots. Now, I suppose we do have some of those around Lambeau Field, some of the bars, restaurants, things like that. They sell their parking spaces, but they do not do kind of like what they have in Orchard Park. One is the RV lot. And this lot where people come in for game day weekends, they come in on Friday night and they camp out. They literally camp out right there in Orchard Park for the weekend. There was the other private lot they called the Hammer lot or Hammer's lot, where they, if it says like no parking before noon or something like that, but if you're not there by 9 a.m., you're not going to get a parking spot. It was just crazy how full it was when we got there at roughly 2:30, and we had to wait. Would you wait, Jeff, about 90 minutes for that parking lot to open up before they let you in to make it official?
Yep.
To get into your spot there, and still, 5 hours before game time, we saw a lot. We walked around quite a bit, Neil. First thing that we found out was the hospitality.
So these Buffalo fans, the Bills Mafia, they party hard. It was impressive just as we were driving in, right? 6 hours before the game. And it's just walls of people walking back and forth, just sort of trying to get in whatever they can get in as far as talking to people, as far as their drinking, as far as their eating was concerned. But we spent most of our time in the Hammers lot, and the Hammers lot was certainly the most fun place to be. It's where a lot of the crazy stuff happens, as Brando and the others of Not Another Buffalo podcast said last week. There are no rules when you're in the Hammers lot. And we certainly saw that the absence of rules made for something that was a really good time. The photo that's here is one of the bar areas that was in the Hammers lot. Guy just has out 50, 60 different types of alcohol. John and I had a screwdriver there, brought one back to Jeff. And it was just stunning, the dedication to the art of partying before the game.
Neil, don't forget that big jug there, that brown colored liquid in that big jug. He gave us each a shot of that. It was like caramel. It was like liquid caramel. I don't know what it was in it, but it was good. He was very proud of his drinks. And so, yeah, we obliged and we threw him some bucks and came away with some beverages.
Well, the other thing, speaking of, as Neil, you alluded to, just walking around. So, in Minnesota, people aren't used to just walking around, on city streets or whatever. If there's a festival or if there's a party or something, you can't walk around with an open container. That's not the case in Green Bay. And that's sure as hell not the case in Orchard Park, New York. So it was, most people had, they had a beverage in their hand, they had a beer or something like that. But then there were the folks that were there for the long haul, the folks that were carrying the 12 pack, the 18 pack, the 24 pack, or if they were really going all out, the 30 packs.
And then you had things like 6 liters of Jameson that were visible. And it was the dedication to how they were presenting what they were doing as well, though, that they wanted to show that they were doing something different. And I really love the presentation aspects. It's clear that there's an element of you're going to have a great time when you're in the Hammers lot, but there is also an element that you're going to have a great time and you're going to have other people see the cool way that you are having and celebrating your team, celebrating Bills Mafia. I really enjoyed that element.
So the hospitality of the fans was one thing, but the fans in general, Neil, were very hospitable as well. And as you would expect on game day, Bills fans in their gear, Packer fans in their gear. One of the first, as soon as we parked, right away, a guy in a Bills jersey came up to us and said hi and wanted to know where we were from and gave us all the tips about being around in the parking lots, showed us where we wanted to get to. I think his name was Mike. Mike, was very nice to us. Chatted with him for a bit. Prior to going into the game, I had been connected with a gentleman named Hans through our tailgating at Lambeau Field and the Tailgating Hall of Fame, a guy named Hans, who is a big Buffalo fan. I connected with him and he advised us where to go. He said, you want to go to the Hammer lot, you want to look for the Pinto and Pinto Ron, and then go find Captain Buffalo. He is expecting you. That was the message that I got. And when we got there, there was only one person who I looked at and said, that's Captain Buffalo. So we went up and introduced ourselves and told him why we were there. And he was very genuine. Just what a character. He was, totally into it. This is his thing. He lives, what do you say, about 4 hours, 5 hours away.
Wow.
And he drives in from the other side of New York for every home game. Doesn't, he wouldn't want to be anywhere else other than the back corner of that parking lot on game day, doing his thing along with the other guys that do their thing. And that's one of the great things that's very similar. We noted a lot of similarities between Green Bay and Buffalo, or technically Orchard Park, in how friendly the fans were, how open the tailgate parties were to everybody. We were not frowned upon, and there were Packer fans and Bills fans intermingling, just like mass, hysteria and dogs and cats living together wherever you went. It was blue and green, and as much as you can imagine, it was just a wonderful day.
That was really my biggest impression from all of the tailgating, was just how much Buffalo Bills fans wanted Packers fans to have a great time.
Yes.
It was, we are all here together. We are all fans of football. We love football. We love our teams. let's make this the best time it possibly can be. And this was just a recurring theme. People wanted to help us. People wanted us to go to the right places. They wanted us to see the best things, whether this was in the city or whether this was in the tailgate. It was almost unanimously a situation where the fans were going out of their way as far as how friendly they were to us.
Agreed. Yeah, they would ask us, "Are you guys, are you having a good time? Do you like, are there was a couple times where fans would even say, are the fans treating you okay? And yes, unequivocally. They, like I said, people, they seemed invested not only in their team, obviously, but then also invested in the opposing team or the visiting team also having a good time. To your point, it's just, all for one and one for all, and not an us versus them or anything like that. So that was really refreshing and really fun.
The most important thing that we were maybe the second most important thing that we were looking forward to, Neil, as you put it, was violence against tables. And we were looking for it. We came in late for one of them. We got a video of one kid doing a table jump, and then we ended up getting some live action table smashing.
That table.
So it's not all partying and fun and games. There's a lot of good going on during the tailgating there. You've got a lot of people there that are interested in raising money. They raise money for various reasons. This fire truck that was there was the 716 Foundation, 716 being the area code there in Western New York. And they were giving away free shots of liquor, really just to kind of get recognition, to get kind of their name out. That there's if you can see it behind me in the picture there, there's 4 little taps that you could get a shot of. We had tequila. I forget what else was even the options there. Once I heard tequila, I said yes.
Fireball was one of the options for sure.
Okay.
So.
Well, like I said, so they're, part of the tailgating, part of the fun. There's a lot of money that actually gets raised by what they call the Bills Mafia. They put things together, the family of fans there, and they pick different charities to give thousands of dollars to after every game. And it's just a really wonderful, you could call it family-oriented event.
That might be a stretch, John.
Yeah, I don't know what family you're part of.
Well, mafia means family, my friend.
It was maybe an Alan Peg Bundy event, but I don't know about what other families, but it was an enormous amount of fun, more importantly.
Packers fans also came in RVs. And what we discovered, Neil, they came from all over the country, and they even came from areas where we were from. These guys were from the Fox Valley. They Kakana and Nina guys, and then a couple of Milwaukee guys in that group. So we found people from just about everywhere.
So, I mean, that is definitely one thing that I've enjoyed, or that I always enjoy about going to Packers road games, is just seeing all the different places that people are coming from and supporting the Packers. And it definitely, there were people, plenty of people from Wisconsin, but there were also Packers fans that were traveling from Dallas to go to the game, or that came from somewhere else in New York State to go to the game. It was the Packers everywhere mantra is absolutely true. And you see that when you go to a road game.
We also have to really recognize the power of social media. Now, last week we had the Not Another Buffalo podcast guys on here. So John and Pat and Brando, they were great. They gave us great advice listening to their podcast. They, certainly enjoyed their time with us as well, which is great. So hi to them again. And then through Twitter, I just kind of threw, kind of like fishing, Neil, right? We threw something out there and we said, hey, we need someone to show us around, and someone who is connected to their podcast, that read what we had, connected us to this woman named Kate. Kate being an Army veteran and lives in the area and is part of the Bills Mafia. She brought us into the Bills Mafia house and the big party that they have there. So Kate, big thanks for all of your advice and for showing us around. But that Mafia house, even, right there, looking out the back door of the Mafia house is Highmark Stadium.
It was really impressive what they had going on at the Bills Mafia house. It was informal, but yet something that was very organized. They had a huge tent of food, a huge spread of food. We showed up too late to eat it pregame, but John thought that it was reasonable thing to eat post game after it'd been sitting out for about 8 hours. John survived, so I'm glad that's good.
Yes.
But they had 2 big bonfires that were going on. They had multiple cornhole games going on. That was something that was going on throughout. People had their own coolers of beers, but everywhere it was just like, hey, you guys need a beer? Hey, you guys need a beer? You guys need a drink? We were constantly being offered drinks in a way that felt very Wisconsin-esque. The camaraderie between the Packers and Bills fans certainly was true around the alcohol. And I don't think there's anything special about Bills fans towards Packers fans, but it was a really enjoyable experience. And the Mafia House specifically, the fact that we go into this thing and it's got Bills Mafia, and you might think this is going to be something that's a very exclusive type of event. And yet, people were there and they wanted to talk to us and they wanted to know how we were connected to people. And we went there post game, and everyone's just sort of sitting around. There was no harassment or anything of the opposing fans. It was, hey, we're all here to have fun and we want to do it the best that we can.
So speaking of the alcohol, so Kate and Hans and everyone we talked to made sure we got to the right place at the right time, that being to see the ketchup ceremony. But right next to where that happened was the 16-pound shot. Heard around the world, Neil, right? Roll that beautiful bowling ball footage if you can.
So the bowling ball shot, as you can see in the photo, is a shot out of an actual bowling ball, a 16-pound bowling ball. They take the thumb hole of the bowling ball and they pour Nyan's Visnyovka, a 50% alcohol beverage, into it. They pour that in, you lift the shot up, you do the shot, and you drop the bowling ball down, you put it back on the table, and then somebody goes and takes another shot immediately thereafter. It is not perhaps the most sanitary thing, but you're hoping 50% alcohol takes care of everything. So
that's right. It's 100 proof. It's safe.
Yeah,
and flammable.
Not including the rocks and the dirt that are picked up when it hits the ground.
Well, if you know how to drop the ball, at least you drop it with the holes up after you've taken your drink. So that prevents some of that in theory. But that's a lot of drinks, a lot of drops that happen.
Yeah, I mean, people are cleaning the bowling ball off with wipes, and those wipes were not clean when they were wiping the ball off. Having a black bowling ball helps hide a lot of things that you don't want to know about, but it's the atmosphere. You don't care. You're having the fun. Let's go ahead and do it.
And I know what you're asking yourself, because we can't hear you, but you're asking, but did you guys see the ketchup ceremony? And the answer is yes. Setting the scene there in the tailgate village in the Sea of Blue, thousands of people gathered at a prescribed time of 6:45 p.m. for Pinto Ron to order a hot dog and sheepishly ask for some ketchup, at which time he was ceremoniously doused with a steady stream of ketchup from 4 large Heinz bottles from atop a van. They had the high ground on him and they covered him with ketchup.
I think the thing about Ketchup Man that is most impressive is just, well, first of all, the stupidity of it, but then how many people are gathered around. There's a hill back behind the van. There's people all the way around within the Hammers parking lot. And it is such a festive atmosphere. They do it an hour and a half before the game is supposed to begin to get people really fired up as far as the game is concerned. And I would call that exceptionally effective as far as motivation.
And for those just listening to the podcast this week, you're missing quite a bit of the visual effects. Upon further review of that video, I think there was even some mustard tossed in for good measure at the end there as well.
It was a condiment orgy.
The party is not just before the game, though. After the game, Neil said the one thing that they are missing in Orchard Park is a stadium district of bars like what Green Bay has there. We did find out eventually there's one bar north of the stadium, one bar south of the stadium, but we also found one of the party houses. And they took their garage and converted it into a bar, and it was open post game, and there were most certainly people gathered there at Milligan's.
Right. I mean, Milligan's, I mean, you take the look at the photo and it looks like it's just a standard sort of bar, but this was just in somebody's garage. And this was not the only place that was like that. It was the houses that are near the stadium decide that they are going to open up as far as being entertainment centers. And unlike the houses around Lambeau that are essentially all closed parties, there are a number of them that were open parties, and that certainly made it for a more interesting experience, especially post game when there was not the going to the bar, going to Anduzzi's, etc. We did go to one of the bars afterwards, and it was certainly a festive atmosphere, but I would put the bar experience in Orchard Park well below that in Green Bay, but they make up for it in other ways.
And traffic is something not to be desired as well. With Green Bay, you have multiple ways to get out of town, side streets, regular streets to go through, but at Orchard Park, there are effectively two exits, one to the north, one to the south. And we waited, Jeff, was it 90 minutes or was it longer?
All of 90 minutes. And even then, once we were back on there, and that was just so we wouldn't sit idle traffic. I mean, and we still 90 plus minutes later, there was still some traffic issues. Yeah. So, that's when I was pulling into the lot, there was a cop standing there, trooper, local cop. And I was like, boy, this is really organized. And he said, just wait. So obviously me being the newbie, pre-game, everything seemed organized, well run, things like that. Post-game, there's, like John said, there's only a couple ways out and you wait. So again, if it's a noon game or even a 3:00 game, it's another hour and a half. You hit the bars, right? So we were done the game, so this was well after midnight local time, and there was still quite a bit of traffic. So you know what, and maybe with the new stadium coming up, maybe there'll be some traffic improvements as well, or maybe that's the charm that they're looking for, and that you're kind of a captive audience for hours afterwards.
Of course, the captive audience is not really bars though, right? I mean, there's really not many people that are making money off of the captive audience. And there is some consternation within Buffalo about the new stadium, right? So we're in the Hammers lot, the key of all of those private lots. And there was a lot of concern that Hammers lot would be something that would be lost when they built the new stadium, that essentially it would be taken over by the city and then
commercialized.
Taken over by the city, but just converted into more parking lots so the Bills can monetize it rather than having this complete area of chaos. And that's really what it is. The people who were in the Hammers lot, they said the Bills lots proper became a lot less fun when the NFL decided to impose all sorts of rules. And so the Hammers lot and a couple of the other private areas, these became the areas where the Bills fans could really let it all out. And we'll see if with the new stadium, it remains the tailgating mecca that it is and really stays as legendary as it is.
Right. It's possible the way the NFL schedule works. We're not there. Green Bay does not play at Buffalo again for another 8 years. Mm-hmm. And if they're planning the new stadium for 2026 and Green Bay goes there again in 2030, you're right. The whole landscape could be different. All the charm could be gone. We have no idea what's going to happen. And since we had the whole weekend in Buffalo, we spent Saturday, we created our own wing tour. We did a little research and we found 4 places to stop. They were called Swanee House, Bar Bill North, Mr. Good Bar and Gabriel's Gate. The picture there is at the Bar Bill North, probably the one where we waited the longest. Surprisingly, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, over in the town of Clarence, kind of on the northeast side of Buffalo, we waited about 45 minutes to get a table. But kind of suburban charm to the interior, but we had our wings there. But they also have a specialty sandwich in Buffalo called beef on weck. Neil, what the hell is weck?
So beef on weck it looks sort of like roast beef sandwich, but the beef is obviously a higher quality, but it's the bread that makes the beef on weck sandwich. It's a very, I don't know, it's a roll type bread, but it's, filled with sea salt and pepper. You put horseradish on it. It doesn't look like it's anything different than a roast beef sandwich, but it tastes something that is an entirely different beast. And we all love the beef on weck.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
They also had a beverage there called the Table Smasher among their other beverages that we're going to work on trying to replicate. But the interesting thing about that one is they use a local beverage called Loganberry. Apparently this Loganberry is a Western New York thing as well, where, we probably should have bought it before we left town, because I'm finding out that it's hard to even find online to get it shipped over. But I'll continue to work on that and try to figure out how to replicate the Table Smasher recipe, because it was delicious. And before we left the Buffalo area, we did have an extra day. Yes, we went up to Niagara Falls. We did a nice Canadian tour along the coastline up to Lake Ontario, and great food, great beverages, and just a great day in general before we headed back home. Jeff, we did not drive back through Canada. We could have driven back through Canada and Detroit, where the Green Bay Packers are playing next. So let's talk about next week and Green Bay at Detroit.
So this is a game where obviously what needs to happen is we need to get back on track as far as our season is concerned. And if the problem that we have is our offense, Detroit is the team that we want to play. Detroit is an outlier as far as how bad their defense is concerned. They have allowed 225 points so far this year, but I think the bigger thing is if you look at sort of advanced statistics on teams, there's a statistic called expected points added per play, and essentially it ranks how good your offense and defense are. So Buffalo, for example, their offense is plus 0.17 EPA per play. Their defense is negative 0.09. So you want your offense to be adding points per play. You want your defense to be taking away points per play. Detroit's offense is basically nothing. Green Bay is right around the middle, offense and defense, not really adding a whole lot. Detroit's defense is adding 0.20 points per play to the other team. That is, their defense is doing what other teams' offenses should be doing. They are an unbelievably bad defense. And thankfully, the Packers offense is going to have the opportunity to feast on it. Hopefully we've learned something from this week, but our 26th scoring offense should get a whole lot better against this Detroit defense.
Well, Detroit being 1-7, unfortunately, Green Bay only has a 2-game advantage on Detroit, and at 3-5, like I said, for those of us who picked the Packers to go 12-5, we need a 9-game winning streak to finish the season. And hopefully it starts this week. As I said earlier, too, the cure for what ails you, hopefully, is a trip to Detroit.
Green Bay scores a lot of points against Detroit. Usually last 4 games, we've scored at least 30 points. So that's a good sign. And Neil, as you said, also that their defense is not good. So now that also begs the question, how is our defense going to hold up as well, right? So is this going to be like a 49-45 game? It certainly could be.
There was a point where Detroit did have the top scoring offense in the NFL through the first few weeks, yet they were also still in negative point differential.
There's also going to be a streak broken this week. The Packers, as we're well aware, have lost 4 straight. Detroit has now lost 5 straight games. So
somebody got to win.
No, we could end up with a tie.
Darn those ties.
Let's hope
but
not.
I'm hoping for a game that includes something that looks like what happened when the Packers played the Lions in 1945. And the Packers set an NFL record for 41 points in a quarter as part of a 57-21 game. That 41 points in a quarter is still an NFL record for points in a quarter. The 4 touchdowns by Don Hutson at that game, in that quarter, is a record for most touchdowns in a quarter still. So
Oh.
let's see some of that 1945 Packers offense and the 1945 Lions defense. I think we'll all end up happy at the end of the game if that's the case.
A couple of the quick stats. So since 2000, Green Bay is 32-12 against Detroit. Rodgers overall is 18-6 against Detroit, throwing 52 touchdowns and just 8 interceptions. And if you're scoring at home, that's a 108.8 passer rating. Jones, his last 3 games against Detroit, 426 yards from scrimmage, 7 touchdowns, 3 rushing, 4 receiving. And another bright spot on the offense is one Romeo Doubs. So he currently has 30 catches, not all against Detroit, but 30 catches so far this year, 296 yards, 3 touchdowns. So one interesting history note here, his 30 catches through 8 games ties him for the most in team history with Billy Houghton back in 1952.
Billy Houghton not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but again, of those 1950s era teams with Bobby Dillon, some great receiving numbers. And if we could get number 85, Billy Houghton, into the Hall of Fame, boy, that would be nice as well. Speaking of Hall of Fame, Neil, we've got the Packer Hall of Fame inductees. 2 names being noted. You got your Jordy Nelson jersey. You said you had a special jersey. I really thought you had a Josh Sitton jersey.
I really should have a Josh Sitton jersey. That's really a failure on my part because, man, you talk about players who made a difference and were a joy to watch. Josh Sitton was certainly one of those players that you knew he was going to run over people. You knew he was going to control the game, and well deserved to be in the Packers Hall of Fame.
As Jordy Nelson as well. All right, so we're looking ahead to Detroit, Green Bay at Detroit on Sunday. We had a great trip to Buffalo, and we got to get out of here before we go. Anything else, you guys?
Well, I'll go first. I'm, like I said, I think moral victory or Packers played better, certainly in the second half against Buffalo. Hopefully, as you said, what ails us, hopefully Detroit will help us fix the Detroit elixir, and we will come away with a win. Although in the pool, I did pick them to lose this game.
Oh, boy.
But small confidence, only 2 confidence points on this one. So we'll see. Believe me, I would like to much rather see a win than getting 2 confidence points. So hopefully that's what'll happen. We're looking forward to a win this weekend.
I'm also looking forward to a win. I think this is the week that Aaron Rodgers gets himself right. I think that Aaron Jones moving the ball is certainly going to happen, but the pass defense for Detroit is abysmal. I think that we've got the ability to, Samori Toure had his first touchdown this week. He looked frisky as far as a receiver is concerned. It looks like we might be getting at least one of our receivers back as well. I think this is a week that Aaron Rodgers gets himself right.
I hope so as well. So we're looking forward to Green Bay at Detroit. Remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit subscribe, leave a comment. It's totally free. You can also find the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat. That's all one word, Green Bay Chat. We are on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. We had a fun time posting to our social media on our big road trip last weekend. Lots of pictures available on Facebook as well, the GBC podcast, Green Bay Chat. And may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Night.